Yeah.
And they're talking about the dynamics between, the more the modern dynamics between men and women.
Yeah, yeah.
Like where it's not, just the male
That's right.
breadwinner
Yeah.
and I've been thinking a lot about that too, like men having to re-identify themselves.
Mhm.
Like, who am I in the household now?
Yes. What role do I play?
Where like, there's some stay-at-home mothers, but also like my wife works and we both are 50-50.
That's right.
So but men have to be better in the household as well if women can contribute
That's right.
financially.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I suck at those household
I
things.
do too.
So I'm like, and it's like you're at a job and you're constantly like, you're sucking at that job and, like you're like,
You got to keep a smile.
you gotta be good.
I'll do better tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh my God, like
The day we took the company public May 21st, 2015, so almost 10 years ago. And it was the first time, so we rang the bell at New York Stock Exchange. We get on Morgan Stanley's jet. They fly us back on their jet back to Montreal, back to Ottawa. I get off the jet. Lindsay was with me because she was there for the bell ringing. We get back to her. It was before we had kids. We get back to the house. I'm feeling like amazing. Like I just took the company public. It was $1 billion market cap. It was really exciting. I get home and I'm feeling like, sky high. And I was like, all right, what do we do? She's like,
fold the laundry.
Exactly. She's like, go empty out the dishwasher. And I was like, what? I was like, I just took a shower.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't care. She's like, someone still needs to go and unload the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember that moment perfectly because in that moment, I was like, there's still real life.
Yeah.
Like,
Even though you want to ignore it a little bit, you're like,
No.
wait, okay, yeah, I still have to do the little things.
real life matters most.
It's not just the big things.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, dude, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the show. So, one of the questions that we're asking,
How long are we going for, by the way?
like 4:30.
Perfect. That's great. Sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna get right into it. One of the questions is, well, your name.
Yep.
What do you do for a living?
Yep.
And then also, like, what's your relation to Quebec?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So my name is Harley Finkelstein. I'm the president of Shopify. I identify as an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. In fact, my real entrepreneurship journey started like a 2-minute walk from where we are right now in the Montreal Garment District in Chabanel, which is where we are. And I had a t-shirt business in 2001 when I was 17. My relationship to Quebec is that I was born here. I was born in Montreal. I lived here until I was about 12 years old in the West Island and spent 4 years here for college and then moved to Ontario in 2005 to go to law school. And I had been living in Ontario, in Ottawa, for the last 20 years or so. And then about a year ago or a year and a half ago or so, my wife decided we want to move back to Montreal. We knew we wanted to leave Ottawa. And it was down to basically 3 places. It was going to be Miami, which is where I grew up, New York, which is where I spend a lot of my time for work, or Montreal. And we ended up living for a period of the pandemic on Lac Tremblant. And Lac Tremblant was beautiful, of course, and it was a nice place to spend the pandemic. We felt very fortunate. But all of our neighbors there were all Montrealers. And it was sort of this reminder of the culture and the people of Montreal. And sort of, we kind of re-fell in love with not even the city of Montreal, but the culture of Montreal because we were spending all this time with those people.
Is she from Montreal?
And she's from Montreal. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. And she's from Montreal.
And you met in Florida?
We met in Ottawa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I came back to Montreal in 2001 to go to McGill. And I started this t-shirt business here, as I mentioned, in the Montreal Garment District. We made t-shirts for universities. And then the t-shirt business was doing pretty well. And a mentor of mine convinced me to go to law school, not to become a lawyer, but to become a better entrepreneur. And this particular mentor was teaching law at the University of Ottawa. So in 2005, after I finished college, I moved to Ottawa. Lindsay was there for graduate school. She went to McGill originally and then went to University of Ottawa for grad school. We met there. And we sort of thought we were going to stay in Ottawa our entire lives. I mean, we built this great company called Shopify. And Shopify was a very much in what we call an IRL company, in a real life company. We were in person. And it was only until the pandemic that we decided we were going to be this work from everywhere company. And that decision to be a work from everywhere company effectively gave us the opportunity to say, okay, we can live anywhere we want on the planet. Where do we want to live? And so we were very intentionally thinking about where do we want to raise our kids. And Montreal ended up being the place that we picked. And we moved here 18 months ago. And I think I've told you both this when we first started talking. It has been truly the greatest decision we've ever made. There is not a single ounce of regret. I've tried to become a bit of a force multiplier for Montreal, for Quebec, for the culture, for the city, for this place. I think it is truly, I think it's the most entrepreneurial city in North America. I think it's the most cultural city in North America. I think it has the highest joie de vivre quotient. And I think it's completely misunderstood. And so when I saw that you guys had this great podcast, I reached out to you and said, at some point, I'd love to come on to explain my version of this place because I think it's underrated and I think it's confused.
Well, I thought it was cool because your take on, I mean,
Si on
waxing
parle français
poetic.
aussi, est-ce que c'est comme...
Je comprends
Ouais.
français. Bon,
Ok.
je peux pas parler trop bien, mais je peux comprendre. Quand j'ai déménagé ici, je viens d'apprendre plus de français, mais je peux comprendre. Oui.
Ok, cool. Alors, si je décide de m'exprimer en français,
Oui. Il y a des mots que je sais pas, mais je
c'est
vais
parfait.
te
C'est comme
demander.
on fait avec Kyle
Parfait.
aussi. Et puis, moi, j'ai
Et
tendance
mon
à...
accent est
Ouais,
vraiment
c'est même chose
horrible.
que moi. Ouais. Non, mais c'est nice.
Ok.
On a besoin ça comme... On a besoin comme parler français avec un accent parce que on a besoin de normaliser ça comme un peu. Ouais.
I was on the board of the CBC of Radio Canada for a couple of years. I think I told you that. And the interesting part about the CBC Radio Canada board meetings was it was almost all in French. And I was living in Ottawa, and so I actually had to very quickly get my French up to a particular point. So, but I definitely understand. So, yeah.
No, now my
Sorry. Sorry.
ADHD is kicking in now.
Yeah.
No, but en fait, here's what I was going to ask. I find it interesting because usually Anglos waxing poetic about the city, it's interesting. Saying the city is great for business, that's interesting as well when there's an exodus of, or there has been an exodus of business-minded people. So I'm curious to know, like, what brings you here business-wise? What are the strong points? Because culturally, I agree, there is more culture here than most places in North
Typically, yeah,
America.
because typically, I feel like that's a stereotype that businesses don't want to come here. It's very hard for them to come here, especially successful businesses. So like, I don't, why come to Montreal in your perspective?
So, first of all, I think that a couple things have changed. First of all, I think that the exodus of Montreal that happened in the business community happened in the 70s. I don't actually think that's happened since. When I think about the entrepreneurs that I admire most on the planet, a lot of them are here in Montreal. People like, Alain Bouchard from Couche-Tard or Aldo Bensadoun, Jonathan Wiener. These are people that I think are global powerhouse entrepreneurs. They live in Montreal. So they have not left. I think what we have not seen is we haven't seen a lot of people necessarily move to Montreal. Like, people stop leaving. It doesn't mean people started returning.
Yeah.
But actually, I am starting to see that. Actually, a good friend of mine, Dustin Jones, amazing guy. He is the owner of Frank and Oak. He just bought Frank and Oak. He owns Spiritual Gangster. He owns.
Isn't Franklin closing?
He just bought the company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what this situation was,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he
yeah.
just bought it. But he was someone who him and his wife Nikki. They're incredible entrepreneurs. They were living in Utah. They just moved to Montreal. So even that narrative that no one moves here, I think is can I swear on the podcast?
Oh, yes.
I think it's complete bullshit. I know people moving to Montreal. So why Montreal from a business perspective? First of all, I think business now is geographically agnostic. Now, if you have a restaurant, you actually have to be in the location of your restaurant. But I mean, other than the Royal Bank of Canada, the largest company by market cap in the country is Shopify. So we're at a scale now where I can live anywhere I want. I can live in Miami or New York or Toronto. I chose Montreal. In terms of that entrepreneurial spirit, I mean, again, we're literally in what I think is the epicenter of the entire, what I call the schmata business, but it's really the apparel industry in Canada. It is right here. This is where Buffalo Jeans was built. This is where Parasuco was built. This is where Algo Industries was built. This is where American Apparel was built. This area here is where the needle trade was created. I told you the story, but my family came here in the 50s, in 1956, from Hungary. They were Holocaust survivors. After the Holocaust, they were in the concentration camps. They went to Hungary. And then in the 50s, there was a revolution in Hungary. It got really, really bad, again, for the Jews. And Canada had allowed 40,000 Hungarian refugees to come to Canada. That's when my family came here. My father came here. my grandfather, because he didn't have any money, didn't have any experience, didn't have any degrees, he came here. They moved to Chamonix in Laval, and he started a little business in the Jean-Talon market. He started an egg stall called Le Capitaine. That egg stall still stands today. If you go to the Jean-Talon market right now, there's still an egg stand there called Le Capitaine. My uncle currently runs it.
Where in Chamonix?
And
I grew up in Chamonix.
just off of 100.
Mhm.
And so that, and my grandparents lived there until they passed away. They lived there their entire lives. My father grew up there. My father went to Chamonix High. So there's like a synagogue there called Young Israel. It was like, that's kind of where him and his community lived. I think that is a story for a lot of Montrealers, that we came here, had no choices. Therefore, we went into entrepreneurship. We didn't call it entrepreneurship. We called it survival. But the way it manifested was in entrepreneurship. And you think of someone like Aldo Bensadoun, Aldo Shoes. Guy comes here from Morocco, barely speaks the language, ends up taking one single ledge, like literally a shelf at a small little retailer called Le Chateau, and turns that one shelf into a multi-billion-dollar retail giant called Aldo Shoes. That's who is, to me, those are the people in Montreal that people want to emulate, that people look up to. Those are the role models. It was Sam Bronfman who created Seagram's from Montreal. So in many ways, I think Montreal as a culture was forced into entrepreneurship because it was so much of an immigrant city.
Do you think that your vision of Montreal or because now it's more Montreal, do you think that that's applicable to the rest of Quebec?
So
Because I agree with what you're saying, and I come from an immigrant background as well, from both parents. I'm the firstborn in Canada, and all those, I lack nothing in my life, but I am reminded of humble beginnings. And I realized that, when you come from that immigrant background, yeah, that idea of survival is ingrained. And now sometimes I realize that this cultural identity, this Montreal cultural identity, sometimes seems to come into conflict with the rest of Quebec. And I was wondering, do you think that what you're describing is applicable to the rest of Quebec? I can certainly see where it connects, because the French Canadians that came here too, they came here and it was survival for them just 400 years ago. Exactly. And people get entitled a little bit. And
Look, my interaction with the rest of Quebec is obviously somewhat limited. Quebec City, the Laurentians, but I think even in those places, entrepreneurship is still very much at the epicenter of profession. We are, if you think about the oil and gas industry, if you want to be, again, historically, if you want to be in oil and gas, you went to places like Texas or Alberta or places like that, I guess, or the Middle East. If you want to be in fashion, you historically would go to Milan or LA or Montreal. There are these places that have a disproportionate amount of focus on particular industries. Quebec, I mean, yeah, we have like hydro, and we have obviously, the forestry industry is really big here. Obviously, the dairy industry is really big here. There are a couple of those, but there isn't one particular thing that defines Quebec industry. It's a lot of different industries altogether. And for that reason, I do believe that Quebec has a lot of that. I can't speak for, obviously, my experience is mostly around Montreal, but I do believe that Montreal is a fractal about the rest of Quebec. I also recognize that there is an inherent tension between, like, it's sort of like Ontario, okay? The capital of Ontario as a province is Toronto. Having spent 20 years in Ottawa, there is obviously a tension between Ottawa and Toronto, right? The legislator, the premier of Ontario lives in Toronto. So you always have this rub between a place like Ottawa or Kingston or other places in Ontario and Toronto. That's always going to be the case, and I'm certain there is some of that here in Quebec. Trois-Rivières probably feels that Montreal gets too much prioritization, too much tax dollars and all that also. But so I don't think that's a unique thing. But I do think, though, that I think that the rest of Quebec worries that Montreal is pulling, this is just my own interpretation, that the rest of Quebec believes Montreal is pulling Quebec into a particular place that maybe they don't always agree with. And I think that's a lot of what has created some of the tension of French and English and Anglophone and Francophone. Clearly, if you think about the Anglophone community in Quebec, it is mostly in Montreal,
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Almost
yeah,
predominantly.
yeah.
What I think gets missed, and this is what I've discovered over the last 18 months of living. Again, I'm new here, so all of this take with a grain of salt. But what I've realized is 18 months. Been here for a year and a half. So what I've realized is that when I ended up doing a conference. I spoke at a conference in 2022. It was the Quebec Finance Conference. I gave one of the keynotes, and I was on stage. Paul Desmarais interviewed me. Paul 3 interviewed me, and on stage at the end, Paul said, "Do you love Montreal?" And I said, "Yes. In fact, I'm going to I haven't told anyone this, but my wife and I just decided to move to Montreal." And the next day in La Presse, there was a story about that we were moving to Montreal, and all of a sudden, I got this this flow of inbound comments, messages, phone calls saying, "You're moving to Montreal?" Like, what? And it was all for Montrealers. People outside of Montreal that heard about this were like, "Yeah, that's the best city ever. It's incredible." Montrealers were like, "Are you serious? Why Montreal?" So one is, I think there's a self-deprecatingness, which we should talk about. But the second thing that I started to hear about is like, "But what about the French?" I'm like, "Je parle français, pas trop bien, mais je peux comprendre." I was like, I think it's one of the best parts of Quebec is that it's French.
Est-ce que tu te considères québécois?
Um, I haven't actually referred to myself as Quebecois, but yeah, I am Quebecois. I live in Quebec. I consider myself first and foremost a Montrealer. And even when I was living in Ottawa, I consider myself a Montrealer. When I was living in Boca Raton, Florida, I consider myself a Montrealer.
So in the States, were you referred to as the Montreal or the
Yes.
Canadian?
Not Canadian, a Montrealer.
Montreal.
I've always so, like, Montreal is deep in my roots. My family's from here. My grandparents grew up. My grandparents.
Your story.
My
Your
story
story.
is Montreal. But on the French piece, 18 months in, what I can tell you is that one, I agree that Quebec should be a French province. Montreal should be a French city, and I'll explain why. Aldo Bensadoun, who's a mentor of mine and a very close friend, explained this to me. He said this. He said, if a lot of people believe that Montreal or Quebec should be bilingual. And the reason that that is wrong is because one of the things that makes Montreal and Quebec so special is that it's French. But because the pull, the gravity of the world, which is English, will pull us into being English. But if you say that we're actually French, the gravitational pull pulls us into this beautiful balance. And I have to say that I think one of the reasons that I decided to move here, that I'm enjoying this place so much, is because of that French culture. So when we moved here was, when we go into a restaurant or a cafe, on commande en français. When I get a phone call from Hydro-Quebec about a bill or something, j'essaie de parler en français. When I'm speaking to people that are clearly francophone, je commence mon conversation en français. They very quickly realize that my French is not great, and they'll switch to it. But I think showing respect is a very easy thing
Ouais,
to
ouais,
do.
c'est vraiment.
And I think that's what it's about.
Pratiquer aussi. C'est comme, it's a low risk parce que si t'es comme, ah, je peux pas, excuse-moi, comment tu dis ce mot-là? Est-ce que c'est.
They'll tell you what word to use, right?
Exact.
And so the more that I do, so I actually I really had this great opportunity. About 8 weeks ago, I gave the keynote at the Montreal Chamber of Commerce. Montreal Chamber of Commerce is like 200 years old. This is an iconic institution. And pour la première 5 minutes, j'ai parlé seulement en français. And eventually I moved to English. But
Ça s'est bien passé?
je pense que oui. Je sais pas qu'est-ce que the audience felt, but je pense que oui. And then eventually I wanted to sort of explain certain details, and I felt I was able to best communicate in English. Mais je commençais en français. I actually think that that's what this is about. This false tension that people outside of Montreal, outside of Quebec feel. What it's really about is respect. And second of all is, if we are not careful, we will lose this French culture. And actually, that's what makes Montreal and Quebec special.
Unique. Yeah, unique.
Interesting.
Yes.
I would not be here right now if this was an English place. It would be like it'd be like Toronto, New York,
Yeah.
Boston, Chicago. I'm here. I chose this place because it's so different.
It's so my wife is French, perfectly bilingual.
You speak great French too.
And it's gotten better because now I have a friend, like my daughter's French and my wife speaks to her in French. So I have French in my house now. So like I never really considered myself Quebec, but now I'm like, oh, I'm speaking to my daughter in French. it's in my house all the time. I'm like, wow, okay. I for the one time in my life, I feel like, okay, after being a dad, I feel Quebecois. But one of the things I wanted to say is that like, we were in Calgary. We lived out west for a couple of years, and she followed. She came, and then after like a couple of years, she's like, I really miss French. I really miss it. And so like the point is that we need to keep French because we love French, and that's what makes it unique and special. Because I think that's the point is, people who leave Quebec or like they'll miss speaking it to their friends or family, the culture as well. So that's what makes
And we should
makes you want to
we should
protect
we
French.
should protect it. And so I'm glad you used that term. We should protect that. That is very, very important. So I mentioned my friend,
But
Dustin.
sorry,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt.
sure.
But like as an Anglos, it's like if we start talking about it in terms of like creating, or a little bit of feedback or anything, they think right away that we're against it.
Which is why I think it's important to actually think about, again, going back to that pendulum swing that Aldo pointed out to me. If the reason you're here is because you think this place, this city, this province is interesting and unique and different, the reason it's interesting and unique and different is because it's a French city, a French province. So that is worth protecting. But sometimes that protection comes off as tension and animosity. And I don't think that's the case. I actually think I needed someone like Aldo to sit me down. Aldo's in his 80s. He's been here for a long time now. And Aldo's a billionaire. Aldo became a billionaire in Quebec. He's a Quebec-based billionaire. He built he was a poor immigrant. He built everything here. So he's very, very proud of this province and this place. And I needed someone like him to sit me down and say, this is the reason why it's important to learn French, to speak French, to embrace French. And I think when you say it that way, then when you use the term protect, it's a lot more beautiful and a lot more positive and optimistic than when you use it in a different connotation where it feels like you like the French because you like the French, not because you don't like something else.
Exactly.
Right?
And we spoke exactly about that point last time. And also, I think for me, it's more, yes, it's important to protect, but enforcing identity is where I get turned
Well,
off.
okay, so let's address the elephant in the room. Go Habs Go. Have you guys have talked about this yet? Okay.
But we saw
I
it,
posted
yeah.
it. I posted it on our social media.
Like, how much of a waste of time?
For everybody.
That's bad
For-
marketing.
and also, Go Habs Go is not actually like, it's not a sentence. It's a cheer. It's a chant. I've been hearing Go.
We're gonna legislate how we chant and cheer on Les Glorieux.
We don't like your culture. Let's change it a bit to
So
make
that is
it
not
more
helpful.
of us.
So,
It's not helpful at all.
I heard one of your previous episodes where you guys talked about that. When someone says, I think you said like, don't move here if you don't speak French kind of thing. I forgot exactly the terminology was.
Yeah. If you don't know French, go elsewhere. But it
Yes.
was, I wasn't saying that's what my opinion is.
Of what? Which,
Va ailleurs.
Va ailleurs. Yes.
Yeah.
Va ailleurs.
But my
Ailleurs? Ailleurs. Okay.
ailleurs.
No, but I know that expression. It's like, get, like, not for you. Get out of here.
Yeah.
So I mentioned my friend Dustin who moved here. One of the other things I think that's happening is a lot of people that are from here, Quebec, Montreal, they leave, they go to school, they get a job, but a lot of people are actually coming back now because they miss that beautiful, I don't know, connection they have to this province, to the city. So that whole expression, like, don't come back, like, stay away, that is damaging. It's also, so the Go Habs Go thing, I think, is, it's
A lot of people disagree with that though.
with the Go Habs Go or the
The ailleurs. Like
Time out. I'm not saying
No,
I
no,
believe.
no.
I'm saying the marketing,
Yeah.
like that were my take on all of these language laws is it's like saying, if you don't know French,
Yes.
go elsewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not telling people,
Yeah.
if you don't know French, go elsewhere. And I think that this like Go Habs Go, allez, abs allez, it's like,
well, LA, Habs LA, it doesn't make any sense. Like, no one says that.
No.
So now
It
you're
sounds
actually
like shit.
So instead of doing that, what I think we should do is, like, imagine whatever money they spent on protecting that, it was a bus, I think, right?
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
whatever money was spent on that thing, imagine instead they spent that money on creating a campaign for how beautiful the French language is.
Make French sexy again.
Exactly.
But that's what
That's-
you were
that's
saying.
the whole
That's
thing.
what we were saying. I was like, hey, I was talking to somebody in the DMs. I was like, and I sent her the Ali Habs Ali, and I was like, what do you think of this? Like, this is where our marketing dollars are going
Now,
to
that makes no
protect
sense.
this. And also, what the person said to me was like, "Oh, this is used as to like from Anglophones to justify the dictatorship of like the language police." You
Yeah,
know,
because yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and yes, but at the same time, like those are big
that's
examples.
right. Look,
Those are big
also,
examples.
And they happen
all
all the
That's right.
time.
Even the fact that we're calling it the language
Do you
police
think there's someone
is
just? Do you think?
so I actually think I can do like, not to say that I want to do this, but I actually think a much better way to do this is stop with, there's sticks and carrots. Stop with the sticks, add more carrots. Meaning, one of my favorite restaurants in Montreal is Mont Lapin. Right, I think it's probably one of the best restaurants in the country. But I think Vanier is amazing, and the team there is incredible. When you go to Mont Lapin, you can have a great experience. You speak English. You can have a way better experience. You speak French
Yeah,
because the
more
servers, the
charm.
chef, it's charming. And so when you walk into Mont Lapin and you speak French, man, like there's a vibe there. And you could speak English, right? But if you speak French, you get a different. That is a great way. That's a great carrot. That makes me want to learn more French. I want to talk about
Those
wine with that sommelier there who only speaks or who mostly speaks French. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think this idea of having a police is all about sticks. I think the culture is all about carrots. And again, you can incentivize some change in behavior two ways. I don't think punishing is the way to go. I think incentivizing would be way better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean we talked about this and I love marketing. And we were saying how do you market the French language?
You bring people to restaurants. You bring
Yeah.
people to Oshiaga. You bring people to all these beautiful. You let them go to to
Let them experience the culture.
Tam Tams on Sunday,
Yeah.
right? Let them go to Tam. That's how you let them go to the Jean-Talon market where all the vendors are all speaking French. That's how you incentivize it because you want to be a part of this beautiful thing.
So this is an interesting question. So when you like say go to France or Paris, right? You have this excitement to like even if if you're from the States or you're from wherever, you go to Paris, like you want to try, right?
Because it's carrots.
But is that the same thing is that the same feeling when people come to Quebec? Like, oh, I can't wait to go to Quebec and try to speak French.
I think for a lot of people,
Or
yeah.
they're like, or the mentality like, oh, am I gonna like if I speak English, are they
Well,
gonna
there is no like language police, and like at least the best of my understanding, there's no. I've never heard of the language police in Paris.
yeah.
I feel like I only hear about the language police here. So what I'm saying is, I think we can be if the goal is if the ultimate number one objective is to protect the French language and culture here, and make sure that this stays a French province, a French city. I think there are more effective ways to do that. I think by introducing my friend Dustin, who came from Utah, to all these amazing things in Montreal and Quebec, take him to like a sugar shack. Okay, you go to like it's sugar shack season now, right? Cabana Sucre. You take him to a Cabana Sucre. You take him a few times to these things. You'll see how quickly he wants to learn French. Lindsay and I, even when
Swing la bacaise dans le fond de la boîte à bois.
exactly. I don't even know what that, but I want to know
I
what that
don't know
is.
what that means.
Exactly. But that's how you do it. You make people want to do it as opposed to you do it not based on
The
fear.
subtleties of the
but
culture.
based on
The subtleties of
you
the
wanna
culture.
but based on exploring subtleties of the culture.
Yeah.
It's one of the other things I think this is a bit tangential, but one of the other things I think that's magic about Montreal in particular, but Quebec also, is that we have these magnets here. Tremblant is a magnet. So one of the things I think that is a missed opportunity is to leverage these magnets to say, look, that's the reason why I think that the hate that McGill is getting
Yeah,
is insane. The reason that
I just got overturned, by the way.
I know, which is amazing.
The,
Well,
the tuition.
yeah, the tuition, because they said the 30% increase is actually unconstitutional.
Yeah, you can't like charge.
But did we have to go this far down the
No!
process
Are you
to
crazy?
to be told?
Absolutely not. So I'm in Montreal now. I'm trying to promote French culture, the province. I'm learning French. My children are in we picked a school that has 2 2 days a week full-time French.
Est-ce que tes enfants parlent français?
Bien sûr. Well, ils viennent de déménager ici, mais maintenant 2 jours out of 5, c'est français seulement.
Et comment c'est
Ah,
passé?
d'accord.
Est-ce que comme les enfants ils aiment ça? Est-ce que ah je veux pas
Ça, c'est
parler
une bonne question.
français.
Comment c'est perçu chez les enfants? Est-ce que c'est désagréable de se dire, ah, on est forcé à parler comme ça?
Parce
Ou est-ce
que
que.
mes neveux sont sont vraiment anglophones, mais toujours demandé mais est-ce que comme tu l'aimes français ou est-ce que comme tu veux apprendre? J'ai toujours dit comme non, je veux pas apprendre. J'ai un peu peur de comme parler français.
That's kids with anything.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
so
but
like,
that's
it's
That's
like
kids with
French. It's like,
broccoli.
do
That's
you want
kids
to
with
learn
fries.
science? No.
Yeah.
Do you want to learn
Yeah.
math? No.
Yeah,
Of
anything
course I want to learn it
uncomfortable.
as well.
Yeah.
But actually, my kids have picked it up really well. In fact, today, I'm not going to say the name of my kid's school because it's public, but because we're on camera here. But today actually was Cabana Souk Day at my kid's school. And they're at some cabana souk somewhere in the country. And the fact that they speak French and they can communicate with the people running it, I think they're over it now. But I don't think necessarily my kids didn't push back when we said the school you're going to has 2 full days a week in French. There was no pushback there at all. But back to the magnet thing. There are these magnets that bring people here that otherwise wouldn't come here. When I came from South Florida to Montreal in 2001 to go to McGill, my entire demo, my group of friends, I had friends that were from Montreal, but my other non-Montreal group of friends, they were mostly Americans and Torontonians, but mostly Americans.
Are you a dual citizen?
Not anymore. No, I'm just Canadian. I had a green card, but I don't now. I'm just Canadian. So my
Good answer.
yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm actually very happy to be.
I'm a dual.
Are you okay? Yeah. So I'm Canadian. So you had this cohort of Americans that came to Montreal. So what happened? Well, a lot of their friends that they were friends with in high school would come visit us in Montreal. Their parents would come to Montreal. I actually think these magnets, again, F1's a little bit, you may love that F1, what it does to you or not, but like it's a magnet. People that have very little connection to Montreal come to Montreal for this. Osheaga is a really cool magnet. I actually think one of the things we should
The
leverage
restaurants in
is
general.
exactly. So they come for F1, they go to a restaurant, then the next time their family wants to take a trip outside of F1, they're like, that experience in Montreal in the summer was amazing. Jazz Fest was awesome. So I actually think we should celebrate these magnets. Sometimes I get the impression that we don't like our magnets. That actually
Well,
we
exactly.
we resent our magnet. We resent McGill. We resent F1. We resent Osheaga because it brings, Actually, I think what we should do is we should embrace it because now, because of McGill, I'm here in Montreal. I'm going to live in Montreal the rest of my life. I want to be here. I'm learning French. My kids are learning French. I'm now a proponent for the French culture here. Like, let's create more of that.
Mais je trouve ça intéressant parce que tes pôles d'attraction culturelle ne sont pas nécessairement les pôles que les gens à l'extérieur de Montréal regardent et se disent on a besoin de plus de ça. I'll say that in English.
No, yeah.
It feels like the poles of attractions that you're talking about sometimes are not celebrated by outside of Montrealers. And even a lot of Montrealers
I think
don't
Montrealers
like.
resent F1 weekend. It's the
Absolutely.
worst weekend. We leave for F1,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff like that.
I mean,
And
that's sometimes me.
But I wanted to link it to the self-deprecation
Yeah.
subject as well. It's like, does it go against Quebec's culture to be brash in the marketing of these magnets? Like, because in Quebec, it feels like all these things, it's like, don't make too much noise. And what we're saying here is it's like all these things like, get more people here, see how awesome it is. And that's what I find is hard sometimes in wanting to push and market Quebec or Montreal culture. It's like there's a pushback from within.
Well, it's a paradox because we want more tourism here. I mean, there's literally Tourism Quebec has a mandate. I don't know what the mandate is, but I assume there's a certain number of tourists to come here. So we actually want this. We spend money on marketing Montreal outside of Montreal. I see billboards. I see the marketing campaigns. So clearly we want these things, but yet we want it in a particular way. What I'm suggesting is this. If let's just say, for example, Quebec as a province embraced McGill the way that I'm suggesting we should and said, McGill is this beautiful magnet, this great gem. So people come to McGill, they do 3 years or 4 years of undergraduate education, and then decide they're going to stay here. What happens when they stay here is this. They're going to be immersed in Montreal, Quebec culture. So they're going to learn French. They may start families here. Their kids are going to go to French school like my kids are.
Absolutely.
Right? They're going to invest in the province. Maybe they actually decide to, build a little ski home in Quebec City or in, Saint Jean or in the Laurentians. All of a sudden now you've taken someone who entered Quebec as an outsider, an Anglophone outsider, and you've almost converted them and indoctrinated them into why this place is so amazing.
Mhm.
Now all of a sudden you have these force multipliers. So not only do you get more people here, but you get the people here that have a deep respect for the culture, as I believe that I do as well. That's the difference between creating this like sense of we don't want you here versus we want you here, but we want you to respect the language and the culture here.
Which
And
is completely fair.
100%,
Like, that's-
totally fair. I believe that's what I believe. I'm here now. I want to live here. I have a responsibility.
Mhm.
Mon français doit être plus bon que c'est maintenant. My kids need to understand French culture.
Je peux
and
te demander une
language.
question?
Oui, bien sûr.
C'est quoi les étapes que tu prends pour comme, apprendre plus de français? Est-ce que tu parles plus en français avec des amis français? Comment tu comme...
Deux choses. J'ai des amis français. Premièrement, les parents de mes enfants, les parents de mes amis de mes enfants. Et 3, Duolingo. Duolingo, c'est très facile. I have the app on my phone. I pull it out every now and then. I like in the same way that when if I spend a week in Italy, for example, I pull up Duolingo also.
This podcast is sponsored by...
Yeah. But that's
Buongiorno.
But that's how I do it.
Buongiorno.
Gorami. I knew coming on even your podcast here that il y a des fois que tu vas parler français et je dois comprendre ça. That's part of the responsibility. Look, I mentioned CBC. I was really fun to be on the board of the CBC in Radio Canada, but I understood getting on there was a responsibility that I got to figure. Like, I can't be the guy that raises his hand and says, can you repeat that?
Parce que souvent, dans ces meetings-là, où il y a, par exemple, 10 personnes et une personne qui parle en anglais et 9 personnes qui parlent les deux langues, on va parler en anglais pour accommoder
Ouais,
cette
non.
personne-là.
Je déteste ça. Je déteste comme quand on est avec un groupe d'amis et comme tout le monde parle anglais parce que
Parce qu'il y a une personne.
parce que je suis
Non,
parle anglais. Mais non,
C'est
guys.
moi qui dois
Ouais.
comprendre français.
Ouais,
That's
bien
what I
sûr.
mean. If
I hate that
if
shit.
you wipe the slate clean, you say, all right, there are these magnets, to use my nomenclature. These magnets are to be cherished, but we actually need to strategize around it. So how do we get more people that graduate from McGill to stay in Montreal and at the same time help them understand the Quebec culture? That should be the conversation. Instead, what we're saying is like, we don't really like them. We're going to charge them a tax. There's going to be a tariff on McGill tuition. And that's basically what they tried to do. That doesn't make any sense.
Mm-mm.
So I think there is a way to have our cake and eat it too. I'm the example of that. Even, the way
I
that,
also love cake.
yeah,
let
you
me
are-
know.
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Good. Yeah. So we can have those things. But, even moving here, part of my responsibility now is to if I see an interesting podcast like you guys are doing, I'm going to raise my hand and say, I'd like to come on and explain to you why I think this place is incredible and special and unique and also needs to be protected.
Well, I like the energy that you come with in wanting to promote this place because I agree, this place is special. It's a place that we all call home, that we all have children here and wish to stay here and make this place grow for us, for our children, for the future. So I definitely like the energy of outsider holding up a mirror and saying, no, dude, this
You
place
guys are amazing.
rocks."
You guys are amazing.
Guys,
and for the
guys,
reasons like
Yeah.
You're awesome.
yeah, have you guys figured out how cool this place is? It's a little bit like that. You know what? Canadians generally are bad, not just Quebec, and Canadians are bad at self-promotion. We have this thing here called tall poppy syndrome, which is that when the poppy grows too tall, we chop off its head, right? Calgary is the same way. We are terrible self-promoters.
Whereas in the States, it
Oh,
seems
there-
like it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
It's
But you got there. It's almost like like you're blinded by everything else. So
Yeah.
Do you know what happened to Toronto? There's been a couple things in the history of Toronto that changed. I believe in the last decade, the most important thing to happen to Toronto was Drake. I think Drake, calling himself the sixth god, and
but he
And
branded
he-
Toronto as a
he made and that one, there's that internet meme of him at the Raptors game, like we did this. You know what I mean? He's like,
Yeah.
this didn't exist before us. like-
the pride. Yeah.
Yes, he's like, look, Drake can live anywhere on the planet, and he chose Toronto.
But
Now-
do you think that
yeah.
because do you think that his music and he's English, he sings in English, that it's like okay, he's created an international. Do you think?
No,
if-
because in his music videos, he shows he shows Toronto people. He
No,
fa-
but I'm saying
yeah.
if you took that to Montreal, right, and if it was a French person, do you think that could transcend it as much?
it has.
And if it would, like if it was an English person, like say Celine Dion.
I was gonna
maybe-
say, Celine, she did that.
Yeah.
But it was very hard for her when she switched from French to English.
Yeah.
People were pissed.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like that we shouldn't be pissed about that because ultimately, still, her catalog, some of the big songs are English because the Grammys are in English.
And she puts Quebec on the map.
Right.
You know what I
And so
mean?
many-
Like,
Yeah.
and
even I sing.
and
So you're
now-
saying,
yeah.
so you're saying to put something on the map, you kind of have to adapt.
Yes, I think you can. I think it's not just an or, it's an and. It's like you can be from Quebec and be proud to be Quebec, and also have a global brand.
That's I dig that because so even though I'm born here and raised here, I definitely feel like an outsider on many fronts. But as a musician in an Anglo band, we go play in Toronto a lot. And it's there that I feel like the Montreal is put on a pedestal and people are like, "Oh, so cool. You speak French." And then all of a sudden we speak French on stage between us and people are like, "Oh, wow, that's pretty cool." And I find it funny because at home it's like here I feel like kind of on the outskirts, but all of a sudden you step out of here and you're waving that Montreal flag and everyone's like, "It's the coolest city."
So let me say this very clearly. Everybody loves this place.
Yeah.
Quebec, Montreal, we are beloved around the world. We are interesting. We have this joie de vivre. Our music scene is cool. Our art scene is cool. We have incredible entrepreneurs. I mean, this whole area we're in, the Montreal Garment District, is it's at a world class. This is an amazing place. We should stop being self-deprecating. We should stop being scared of ourselves and rather embrace it. And also educate people like me that come in here and have these conversations like I had with Aldo to say, Harley, if you think this place is great, you should know the reason it's so great is because it has this unique element that nothing else in North America has. It's French. It's not bilingual, it's French.
Mais connaissez-vous l'expression en français qui dit, je me rappelle pas c'est qui a dit ça, mais que les Québécois sont nés pour un petit pain. Have you ever heard that expression? So it directly translated, it's born for a small bread.
Bread, yeah.
Which is almost, I guess what they mean by that is
Small thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not blanketing all Quebecers, but I think is the self-deprecatingness linked to that?
That's not just a Quebec thing. So here's a fascinating thing.
Is it a Canadian thing?
Okay, so 5 largest companies by market cap in the US. Okay, you know what they are. It's Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA. The 5 largest companies by market cap in the United States have all been created in the last 30 years. The 5 largest companies in Canada, other than Shopify, the youngest one other than Shopify is TD Bank.
Wow.
Created in the 50s, 1957, I think, like that. Before that, we go way back. It's like RBC, Bank of Montreal, like way back, okay? So generally, like there is it's not a lack of ambition, it's a lack of pride, I think, that we have in Canada. We are
Canada?
in Canada in general. Like if you think about even in my kind of world, technology world, we are a country generally of companies that get acquired, not acquiring, like not the companies that do the acquisition. So if you think about the like offices here in Montreal or Toronto or even Quebec City for that matter, you see a lot of branch offices of US companies, right? There's a Google office or a Microsoft office, or those are very good at happening, but we need more HQs in Canada. And actually, when we took our company public about 10 years ago, we did a dual listing, New York Stock Exchange and Toronto Stock Exchange. We went to do this roadshow where we met all the investors. And the first thing that the US investor said is, "Oh, a Canadian company, great. We haven't seen anyone since RIM or BlackBerry and Nortel." So like, rather than sort of talk about like, you know, the excitement around a great Canadian company being built here, we were compared to the ones that didn't really, like, there is this weird self-deprecation where we don't want to be boastful. That's a wonderful thing. It's good to be humble. It's good to be thoughtful. But sometimes we get in our own way.
Because we were talking about the artists before, like The Weeknd, Justin Bieber, Celine Dion. All these are like the biggest artists of. I mean, Celine Dion is different, but
of their industry, of their category,
and they're all Canadian.
That's right.
So
I go even further. You look at DJs, and you look at Deadmau5, you look at, you know, Seth Rogen in terms of comedians. Like, you can keep going.
That's true.
We are incredible at what we do. We just don't necessarily, and this is something that Seth Rogen talks a lot about. He talks about that he actually had to go to the US to get the endorsement that he was important before Canada would realize it. Mike Myers said the same thing actually also.
I mean,
yeah,
we see that a lot.
That's right.
And Seth Rogen said also, it's like going to the States, it was an easier way. It's like you're holding up the mirror
Yeah.
to the people that are there, but
Yeah.
being an outsider is what gives you that perspective.
That's right. But I think in the case of the Canada-wide issue, I'm not necessarily sure that's going to change because like we literally have hundreds of years of history here. I do think Quebec is a bit of a microcosm of that. And actually, I think Quebec has an opportunity right now. I don't know if it was Montreal or Quebec, but I think we had record immigration in the last 2 years here in Quebec. Record immigration. I think there was 1 million people that came to, again, I'm not sure it's Montreal, Quebec. I'm sure someone in the show notes or someone.
It must be Quebec. 'Cause
Yeah.
a million
Quebec.
people in Montreal would
Yeah,
be
a
a
lot.
lot.
So I think there's been 1 million people that have come. Canada's had record immigration also, but we all know that. But I believe Quebec has had record immigration over the last 24 months relative to the last like 5 or 6 years. So people want to come here despite all this, despite having, being self-deprecating, despite having this like, well, the French and English tension. The fact that we are still so well liked and beloved and people still want to come here. Imagine what we can do if we just sort of said, okay, let's stop with the Go Habs Go stuff. Let's agree that this should not be bilingual. This should be a French province, a French city, because that's how you maintain the culture. Yes, 100%.
And bringing Anglophones on board to, to help with
not
that.
just French should do that. Anglophones should also agree
Yeah.
that, like me, I want to keep this. I want this to be a French
And
place.
Kyle, that's what I thought was cool with the podcast is the whole point is, hey, there are Anglos here
who wanted to.
who want to be included
Yeah.
in this vision
That's right.
of Quebec.
Yeah.
And it's not because your French isn't perfect that you're not a part of the discussion. It's not because you're 18 months here. Like the fact that I appreciate both of you speaking French. And it's like, it's by doing so that we get better and make people feel included
Yep.
as opposed to these walls.
Because you need to fail. You need to, like a.
Well, you
if-
need to fail, but you need to also be open in the inclusion. Well, both of you have said it. Like, you want people on board to be champions of this place because this place is awesome.
I have
Yeah, it's
done
amazing.
I've done 8 interviews since I've been here as to why I moved here. Why? Because like
little PR run.
Lindsay, my wife and I kind of went on a pair run. We
Yeah.
did La Presse, we did Le Devoir, we did Montreal Gazette, we've done
Wow, I see the
MCL.
Franglaise on that tour.
Yeah, no, we did it. We like, and why? Because we want people to know this place is incredible. And if you don't want to come here, you don't have to. But I just want to explain why I think this place is amazing. And I don't think it's amazing because it's because of it's me. I think it's amazing because of what the history of this place is all about. Last weekend, I went to 2 restaurants. I went to Schwartz's. Or did takeout from Schwartz's, obviously, famous Montreal restaurant. And I went to L'Express in St. Denis. Schwartz's could not be more kind of like old school Jewish Anglophone English Montreal. And L'Express cannot be more French. I mean, it is like, it is like, it is super French.
Yeah.
And I loved both of them. I love the juxtaposition of it. I love the vibes, how it's different. I want to embrace that stuff also. I don't want L'Express.
They're not
to
trying to be. That's what I like. They're not trying to be different. Like I
try
go
to be itself.
I go to other places. Like I go to other places and communities, and they're like, trying to fabricate
It's Disney
culture.
World. It's Disney World.
Yeah, trying to
exactly.
fabricate culture, and like Montreal kind of does it effortlessly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that. And there's a personal question that I kind of have, and you're a great person to talk to about this, and it's a question that I've asked myself a lot. Does money kill creativity or culture? Like it's a big question, but like it's something that I've been asking myself because
It's almost like if you can do everything, then it becomes hard to
like
pinpoint.
did Montreal become so good because we had low rents and artists were able to come here and survive and actually experiment with things and do things? So like I know you talk about entrepreneurial, like, and we're very proud of that, but does it kill culture? And I'm just curious
I just got back from, as you guys heard, I was in New York earlier today. Shopify's office in New York is in Soho. Soho historically was the artists' place. It was the artists' lofts. It was where the creatives went, the chefs, the DJs, the musicians, the art dealers. And now like Soho is not that, right? Soho has like, it's a lot. So
it's fabricated.
I mean, there's a lot of high-end stores now. There's Cucinelli and there's, Prada and there's all these places. I still think there's a grittiness to Soho that still exists because even despite the fact that you have some of these nicer places, it still has a grittiness to it. Same thing with Montreal. There are certain areas of Montreal where you can say, well, Mile End or Le Plateau. Le Plateau or La Plateau? Le Plateau. Le Plateau, you still walk. I actually walked from my office last week to Doubles. You know Doubles?
Mhm.
Great spot. Zach's an amazing restaurateur, great chef, or great host. So I walked down literally Park Avenue the whole way. I think Park Avenue becomes something else in Old
Blurry.
Montreal. Blurry, exactly. So I walked from Blurry because our office is in Old Montreal, and I kind of walked down Blurry to Park Avenue, and I kind of walked through all these different areas. Like you have the McGill Ghetto, and then you kind of keep going, and you can sort of see where there's gentrification. And certainly you can see where, like, it doesn't fit. Sometimes there's these big condos, you're like, that doesn't belong there. So I want to just separate, like, bad urban development is bad urban development. And there are places that you're going to see in Montreal or other cities where you're like, that doesn't make any sense. It killed it. But that's different than, like, rents go up. Inflation is a thing. Things get more expensive in different places. I still actually believe this to be true, that I think Montreal is one of the most affordable cities in North America. 100%. Now, my wife and I live in Westmount. Westmount obviously is a much more, is a well-to-do area. When I was growing up, by the way, I didn't even know anyone that lived in Westmount. Like I was in the West Island in a house that, was a very modest home in the West Island. So I think you can I think back to your cake, I think you can have it both ways. Yes, I do think you still need to keep things at a certain level so that the artists, the chefs, the DJs, the people that create interesting culture can afford to live. But I think actually Montreal has maintained it more than almost anywhere else. And I think if you say, well, it's gotten expensive everywhere.
Yeah,
Toronto's the same thing. Ottawa, like, hasn't really grown very much. In Ottawa, one of the reasons we left Ottawa is because Ottawa really has suffered deeply as a city over the last couple of years. The federal government used to sort of own downtown. They're not in the office anymore. Downtown has been decimated. One of my best friends is the best restaurateur in Ottawa. He feels that. But I think Montreal has maintained the grittiness. And that's sort of my point about walking down Park Avenue. Despite the fact that, yeah, you had a building here that didn't fit, generally, you still sort of feel like there's an authenticity and a grittiness to Montreal.
How do we, I guess, keep that? Because for me, yeah, like I've been to some places where it feels like it's overdeveloped or, or
In Montreal or
in other places, like, let's say in Montreal, like there's some places where I'm like, oh, it's lost. It's like thing because it feels like it's trying too hard.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's
like it's trying too hard to be commercial or it's trying to. But anyway, I know it's
a really good friend of mine
opposite,
and someone who I think is one of the best entrepreneurs anywhere, but also in Montreal, is Andrew Letfy. Andrew Letfy just built Royalmount, and there are people that think Royalmount is a monstrosity. It's so
Is it doing well? Sorry.
I mean, I think I love it. I think the restaurants there are amazing. I think it's brought these retailers. You may not like the retailers, but it's brought retailers that are beloved by a lot of people to Montreal that otherwise were not here.
like who?
Well, LV, like Royalmount's a partnership with L Catterton. L Catterton is owned by the Arnaud family. So if you go into Royalmount, you will see stores that you wouldn't see anywhere else. I mean, Aloe Yoga, and not.
Is there a lot of people though? Is it?
I mean, every time I've gone, it's been pretty busy. But I think these things take a while.
Yeah.
So I am, number one, optimistic about Royalmount, but I also hear that like Royalmount's huge and it's in the middle of the city. What's so fascinating about that area is like you can go to Royalmount and you can go to the Orange Julep. Like it's right next door to each other. I actually think the juxtaposition of Royalmount, which has these amazing high-end stores, a beautiful Rolex store, but then you can go and get like a poutine and an Orange Julep right next to it. That to me, like, it may not seem like they fit together, but there's a beauty to it.
Yeah,
that Montreal can have
fusion,
both those sort of things. That I can go to L'Express and I can go to Moishes and I can go to Snowden Deli, but I can also go to like a random casse-croûte. And I don't think we should try to be, the term pearl clutchy. I don't think we should be pearl clutchy.
Oh yeah.
I think cities that are too pearl clutchy end up losing their heart, their soul. I actually think we should, like, if someone like Andrew who's ambitious, who's putting his own money on the line to build something really, like, probably one of the most ambitious retail projects in Montreal history. He also did Distrant in South Shore. I think we should embrace and applaud people that take big risks. But I also think that like that shouldn't exist in Le Plateau. Le Plateau should be walk-ups and little corner stores and couche-tards and different
There's a culture if they're gonna change that.
That's
right. Like, okay, they haven't been there.
That's right. And so I don't think we should stop development or innovation. I just think that it should be done in a tasteful way. And actually, I think In particular, Roma was done in a very tasteful way.
Mm.
Like, because you can go to a fancy restaurant, but you can also go for yakitori or ramen. I love that.
Yeah.
I haven't had orange julep in a long time.
Oh man, their poutines are so good.
And the orange julep is delicious.
Oh, the
Actually-
actual orange.
Yeah, I
julep is
actually like it with a scoop of ice cream. Yeah, a little secret. Yeah, they put a scoop of ice cream in there. It's called I think it's called a frappe.
Do you ever go back to? Have you been back to Florida?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have family there?
Yeah, family there, friends there. I almost moved there. It was going to be it was going to be Montreal, Miami, or Manhattan. And I'm really glad I'm here. I also think that
I find raising a family here is definitely
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so great.
It's I feel safe.
Yeah.
I feel taken care of by. It's a walkable city. It's nice. It's just nice with kids. I can see why you picked here. I mean, Miami.
What were the other options?
Well, Miami,
Yeah.
Manhattan, and Toronto.
No, Montreal.
No.
We my wife and I have a place in Toronto. I'm in Toronto fairly often. We have a condo there because I'm there so much. I like going there, and then I can't wait to get back here. I don't need anything from the city other than it to be what it is, and I still want. I really believe this place is incredible.
Do you feel, or do you kind of like are wanting, like, I guess from, when you first got here, you wanting to feel accepted, like Shopify to feel accepted, or like what's the?
No, I think I need to earn the right to be accepted.
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't deserve anything. I don't deserve anyone. The articles that came out about me moving here were mostly not because of Harley. It's because like the president of Shopify came here, and that was and it wasn't like we're so happy he's here. It was just a fact. Like it was just he's moving here, and that's like that. That's kind of neat. I now believe that if I want to, it's my responsibility to earn the right to be part of this community. I'll tell you a quick thing. A really great chef who just left Joe Beef, his name is Benji, is opening up a restaurant in just off the Carry. And I found out about it. His name is Benji Greenberg. The restaurant's called Yan's. And I just found out about it, and I was like, I'd like to invest in your restaurant. He doesn't need my, I'm sure he's got great investors. That's not me. I'm not really in the restaurant industry, but I want to vote with my wallet as much as I possibly can for things that I think are interesting to exist here. And I don't feel necessarily accepted, nor do I feel rejected by it. I think it's my responsibility to be a part of it. If I hear of an amazing new podcast that I think is interesting, I want to reach out and say I'd like to come on it and have a conversation about why I'm here. I don't think the city owes me anything. And I think, this is so cheesy, but like it's like the JFK speech, like don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's it.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out, and I really find it cool. Again, like it's so rare to have Anglos talk so highly of this place, and
It throws people off. Like, what?
well, it does, and I find it cool. And
Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is?
Because it's been so routine that like the fight has been so like for so long.
But what is the fight? And that's sort of maybe what I'd love to sort of understand better. Is
fighting for identity all the time, right? Like the narrative of like, I said on there like, oh, I think we should separate. Quebec should separate from the rest of Canada. But that, that was just in terms of like.
But the separation thing is really about identity also, right? It's about protection.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
It's the Go Habs Go thing all over again.
Yes.
It's all about so what I'm saying is like as an outsider, as a newcomer, as someone that like loves this place, what I'm suggesting is, one, when I got here and told people that I was moving here, I said this earlier, outsiders were like, Montreal's the best. People that live in Montreal are like, well, what about the French?
Yeah.
What about the traffic? What about the potholes?
The
What about
taxes,
the taxes? I was like, dude, all those things you can say about every single city. What about the culture? What about the restaurants? What about the music scene? What about the mountain? What about the people here? Like, what about all the other good stuff here as well? So one is, I think, like, this self-deprecating is not working for us. So let's move on from that.
It's never good. Your words have power, and whatever it is that you do say,
That's right.
It's the power of attraction.
I interrupted you. He asked you the question, and I feel like I interrupted your answer, but it was like he asked you why. Like, why do you think Anglos have that or people have that perception about Anglos? I think.
Why Frank?
Like, okay, back to the like, why do we feel this deep insecurity that we have to talk about things like what the Go Habs Go thing? Where does that come from?
Well, okay, I went to school in French my whole life.
Yep.
I would get detention because I would speak English. So
Wow.
so there's a huge part of my identity that it's like, oh, well, that's bad. And then you're going like, and I'm kind of not a contrarian, but I like to press buttons.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what's the deal? This dude is speaking Spanish or Russian, and he doesn't have the same treatment. Oh, well, I didn't hear him. It's like, you're hearing the English though.
Right.
And although I do agree that English, like you said, the pendulum can take over, I find that demonizing
Got it.
is aggravating. And the thing is, especially coming from my Italian American background, when I speak English to my kids, I feel like just doing that is a political statement.
Right.
I find just being an artist who sings, or I play drums, but my bandmate sings in English, that's a political statement when I don't think that it should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that for me is bothersome. At the same time, for the Francophones that are here for 400 years, they view English as like any. I shouldn't say this because I can't. No, because I can't say they feel.
Yeah.
But it comes
perception
across
seems.
as
Yeah.
it seems as though that there's this kind of like anti-sentiment, and that's why I find it interesting coming from you, who's promoting all of these things, and that is almost like
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I mean,
what's this guy? What do
goods
you
in the
mean to
trade.
celebrate here?
Right, right. When you go to I've been to a bunch of the Habs games, which are so much fun to go to. And there's 22,000 people at the Bell Center for a Habs game. When 22,000 people are screaming "Ole Ole," no one cares about if it's English or French.
Yeah.
It is unity. It is energy. It is amazing. Like, that needs to be sort of the metaphor for this place, that this place should be French because it needs to be protected. It's important and it's fragile. I think that's actually what I was trying to get at. Is like, there's a fragility, I think, to the French language and French culture. Why? Because if you think about it just visually, there are all these cities, let's say Canada, provinces, cities, but all of North America, and then expanded all over the world. The world's language, for better or for worse, is English. The language of the internet is English. The language of entertainment, Hollywood, is English. Pop culture is English. So I can really appreciate that at the center, we have this little thing, this little fragile thing in the middle, and we're surrounded by this thing, and we are petrified that if we are not careful, we're going to lose it. What I'm suggesting is that I think the way to protect it is to celebrate this thing in the middle, not to build a wall around it, right? To build
Yes.
bridges, not to build barriers.
Yeah.
And I think if we do that, this experiment that I've been doing, which is 18 months old now, 18 months in duration, is I embrace it, I protect it, I acknowledge it, I love it. It's working for me. It's working for me because I'm enjoying this place so much more because of that as well. And what I'd love people that are watching or listening to understand is there are others like me that will move here, that will respect the culture, that will protect the culture, that will propagate the culture, that will disseminate the culture around the world. Don't make it so difficult. Don't make it so off-putting that there were so many people, again, back to that La Presse article, after that came out, that said, are you really sure you should move to Montreal? Don't do that. Some people that move here will be bad actors. They're going to say, they're not going to try to learn French, and they're not going to want to go to the Cascades and go to L'Express. They're going to want to go to there's always bad apples.
There's not a lot of people like you.
There are.
No, I'm saying that are willing to fail, if, to speak French and to feel uncomfortable not being able to communicate. So it's like they put up a lot of barriers because of that. So that's why I think.
Yeah, but I think there's an opportunity there to say, look, your experience in Montreal and in Quebec is going to be way richer if you learn the language.
Yeah.
And in the same way that,
100%.
right now, at least in my world, I think in all our worlds, AI is becoming like the thing. All of us are using AI on a daily basis. In fact, I start my day now by effectively journaling in using OpenAI.
Brain dumps.
Yeah, brain dumps, like everything I want, because I want it to know as much as possible.
Yeah.
That is a new muscle that I'm trying to build. It was very uncomfortable. Now it's getting more comfortable for me to do it on a daily basis. When I'm drafting an email, first I'll draft it in Perplexity or OpenAI, and then I'll write the email itself because I want it to help me write better. The same thing exists. When you come to a place like this, you have to build new muscles here. And I think there are enough people that want to do it. And I think we are inflicting self-harm by saying no one should come, because we're trying to avoid a couple bad actors coming. And I think if we actually, back to the magnet, if we say, look, McGill's a magnet, F1's a magnet, Quebec City's a magnet, Toronto's a magnet, we get all these people in, let's make it so they want to stay here. And actually, we want to actually, and stay here in the right way.
It's interesting because I'd like to ask in the comments what people outside of Montreal, what their magnets are.
Mhm.
I'd be curious to see because
Oh, Quebec City is a huge magnet, right? Like the most beautiful. Whether if you like architecture on a macro global level, Quebec City is objectively spectacular. That's a huge magnet outside of.
well, this whole
Gaspésie
province
as well,
is- this
yeah,
is it's a beautiful province.
Only in my like late 20s as an adult or like 30s that I went out there like Gaspésie and like and it was because of COVID, and like I went out there, I'm like, holy, like this is here,
Mm.
you know, like, and that's a magnet definitely for me, but not a lot of people.
I
you know.
I just went to this place called Canuck. Do you know Canuck?
No.
It's near Montebello. It's a fishing lodge. It's like, I'm not a big fishing guy, but like it is so beautiful. You would think that you've driven 10 hours.
Mm.
It is an hour outside of Montreal. And you can do that in every single direction.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
even
yeah,
just the
yeah.
skiing, right? Like, so.
Don't get me started on skiing.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, he could 3 episodes in a row. He's like, I'm not an outdoors guy.
Yeah.
Anyways,
just
But,
anyway,
okay, but even like, so again, I don't know much. I don't know as much about outside Montreal as you do in Montreal, but I do believe that like we have so much to be proud of here that rather than say like don't come near it, we should say come near it with an asterisk saying, but do it this way. This place is
which is not only a fair point, but most people say in the comments as well, like, isn't that what should be the norm? And I think it is. I think most people that do come here do respect the culture here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a curveball.
Let's go.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I'm curious. How do you think I mean, you're Jewish. You grew up here. How do you think the Jewish community feels within Quebec itself? Because it's such a strong community, and I'm so like, and that most of it is English, right? And so, do they feel? Yeah, I'm curious, like the perspective of it, because
So there was so it's a very fascinating story because outside of Israel, if you look at the diaspora, on a per capita basis, Montreal has a very, very strong Jewish community. You know, historically, actually, it was really like it was the Bronfman family that was here that kind of helped create the Jewish community here. And if you think about like Toronto, New York, LA, Miami, of course, Montreal is up there in terms of from an impact perspective, from a concentration perspective of Jews as a percentage of total per capita. Montreal has a very strong Jewish community and has been around for a very long time. I mean, my family came here to escape persecution. So Montreal is very deep rooted in sort of Jewish culture. But actually, there was this mass exodus that happened along with, this is so crazy, but the head office of the Bank of Montreal is in Toronto.
yeah, I know it moved during the
That's
referendum stuff.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, so in the 70s, when a lot of Anglophones left Quebec to go to Ontario, a lot of Jews left as well. But I think what you're left with now is a Jewish community that has deep, deep respect for the Francophone culture.
Do a lot of them speak French?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
they're bilingual?
You know, a lot of them, first of all, a lot of the Jews have married French Canadians.
Hmm.
There's a ton of that happened in Montreal, but I think the ones that are here now.
Can I answer
Yes,
that?
please.
Is it looked down upon?
Not at all.
When they're like, you marry outside of like a Jew?
No,
or...
Jews are fairly. I mean, it's
But
in
like
modern
you
day
could say the
it
same
happens
thing
everywhere.
about Italians.
or any religion.
That's
You didn't, not Irish. Like, you didn't marry an Irish person?
but
Like, you never heard that.
You don't hear that?
You'd be
Yeah.
surprised how much
never
of
hear
that
Yeah.
in all of
No, you don't hear that at all. But what I do think though is actually, I'll give you a great example. One of the most beautiful synagogues in the whole world that I've been to is called the Shar Shamayim. It's the big synagogue here in Montreal. It's in Westmount. And my wife and I and our kids, we go there for the high holidays. His amazing rabbi that we have there. A part of the rabbi's sermon is done in French.
Hmm.
So here you have like an iconic, like truly on a
Mhm.
global scale, an iconic synagogue where part of the sermon is done in French. So not only do I not think that there's tension there, I actually think that the Jews that have stayed in Montreal that are still here deeply love the French culture. Otherwise, they would have left a long time ago.
Hmm. That's cool. I don't know. It's just something that I was
Yeah.
curious about, and
Actually, I think there's like no one's
'cause
really
it's
done this
some-
yet, but well, there's a great movie, great book called Daddy Kravitz.
Hmm.
Mordecai Richler wrote it, which actually, in my view, people outside of Montreal that have ever been here, part of what they know about Montreal it comes from Daddy Kravitz.
Hmm.
This book, like Mordecai Richler, this is a very big book, and the movie was a Hollywood movie as well. Richard Dreyfuss, I think, was the star of the movie. So it was a Hollywood movie, but it's about Montreal, and in the movie. And in the book, which is where it originates from, it talks a lot about the connection between like the Jews, who a lot of them grew up like on Saint Urbain, Saint Laurent, like the Maine, right? The Maine was this culmination of because
That line.
that line, right? East of the Maine is French, west of the Maine is English. But the Maine was the centerpiece of it, which is that's where Schwartz's is. That's where Walensky's is. That's where so many things are. And so actually, I don't know if anyone's ever written about this, but there's a fascinating, deep-rooted like Venn diagram overlap of French Canadian culture and the Jewish culture here. Like in many ways, we're all outsiders.
Hmm.
The French Canadians are outsiders inside of Canada. The Jews are outsiders on a global scale. I actually think that there's this beautiful relationship between Montreal Jews or Quebec Jews and French Canadians.
Well, I there's a lot of people that have said also like, hey, I mean, let's say people who are from visible minorities or children of immigrants that have said, why can't we feel like we're a part of the struggle in keeping Quebec and being different than the rest of North America?
Yeah.
And wouldn't we be stronger if we included other people in the fight in upholding Quebec's identity?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think
Let's collaborate on that together.
exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
As opposed
It's a
to us versus
collaborative
them.
effort.
Let's collaborate. I think the reason we haven't collaborated is actually the reason what you said earlier, which is there is this assumption that Anglophones want to make this Anglophone. And what I'm suggesting, if you've heard nothing that I've said on this interview so far, my main takeaway is I'm challenging that. I actually think that the Anglophones that are in Montreal and in Quebec love that this is predominantly and focused on being a French place. That's why we're here. Otherwise, we would have moved. We all can move. Even people that don't have
and moved and came back.
Exactly.
You know, like,
And actually now what I'm seeing is so many people that I know that are Montrealers or Quebecois that left Quebec are coming back to Quebec. That tells me something, that despite all of this stuff we're talking about, this place is so fantastic that people still want to come back, even though there are problems here. But imagine we start collaborating. Imagine we just we cut the shit for a second and stop with the Go Habs Go garbage. And we just say this place is French. And we want it to be French. And if you don't want it to be French, you shouldn't be here. What's this expression?
Vailleur.
Vailleur. So what I'm saying is I want this to be a French province and a French city. I want the French culture here. Otherwise, I would have chosen to go to New York or Miami. I came here because it's uniquely different.
and I'm not gonna lie that my perception has been, what I have now. Like when growing up, it was not that.
Yeah.
It was very much
But
French and English.
yeah, but don't we all? Isn't the goal in growing up is to realize that, hey, I used to think something. My point of view has evolved.
100%. My perception was not like that because I felt like a deeply
outsider.
outsider, and I kind of resented the fact that I couldn't go to my full potential. But anyways, when I moved back to Montreal, I was like, I had that resentment.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I have to figure out, I had to change my perception here. And that's when I went to go work for a French company.
Yeah.
And I put myself in in those hard situations. And yes, it was
amazing.
It was difficult, but it made my French so much better and more comfortable, so
Well, for me, growing up mostly in French, Anglophone father and Francophone mother, I never really felt Quebecois either. I used to say I'm never going to be with a Quebecois girl. I married a Quebecer girl. Yeah. But I just speaking the language doesn't mean that you're a part of the culture, which is what I've learned. But I'm learning that I do have my place here, and there is a way to make this place brighter with me in it without being a conflictual force.
This podcast you guys have is so remarkable because of that. Because what you're sort of doing is you're inviting this conversation is not a simple conversation. This is complicated. There's some deep-rooted issues. There's 400 years of layers. So there's words of it, right? But what you're doing is you're inviting in debate and high-quality discourse. And I think ultimately that is amazing.
Well, that's what we,
let's
that's what we
debate
want.
it. Like whoever decided to do the Go Habs Go thing, I'd love to debate you on.
And
this,
that's
right?
we reached out to l'OQLF,
Yeah.
got turned
For
down,
any-
which
for
is
an
fine.
email, like,
Yeah.
like, we're
Why
like-
would they turn it down?
Because like, well, we're not literally in their email. They're like, oh, our job is to enforce it rather than promote it. So like, this is basically to like,
Well, that's the whole
promote it.
thing.
That
So
is
it's like,
literally the entire
here's the
thesis
door
of what
slam.
I'm saying is like promote it.
Yeah.
Don't like you can protect it by promotion as opposed to protected by penalty,
exactly.
right? Explain it better. And again, sometimes I understand
It's
what
a
they're
bunch
doing
of
is
snipers
important,
just like
but
waiting.
but the Go Habs Go thing, it's not even an English thing. Just like ole ole is not an English thing. It's a Quebec or a Montreal cultural thing, right? And I think we can have more of that. I mean,
Embrace it. Push
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
You know, like what?
It's so hard to resist them. Like just like with marketing, it's like, when if something bad happens to Shopify, you're like, okay, we could push against it, or we could move with it
That's right.
and use it to our advantage to actually
Well,
be stronger.
Companies that innovate, thrive. Companies that don't die.
Yeah,
Right?
adaptability, and
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
right.
we're seeing it with
And that's what you
AI,
have
and
to
we're
do.
seeing it with just with
You know why I want to learn French the most? Not even inside the restaurants. My wife, Lindsay, she speaks beautiful French. And when we go into a nice restaurant and she's speaking this beautiful, and it's like it's French Canadian French, right? It's like Quebecois French with the accents and the joie, those particular words that are so Quebecois. It is beautiful. That is what I want to speak French like her. My grandparents, they're in their 90s. They're still alive. They live in Montreal. My grandfather spent his entire life as a peddler. Do you know what a peddler is?
no.
He would basically take his car and come to this area here, and he'd fill up his trunk with all types of like clothing and vacuum cleaners, and then he would drive to Valleyfield.
No, what's the word? Never mind.
Yeah.
Alright,
So
I'm sorry.
it's so
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks to that guy.
My brain. Oh, my brain.
so he would call himself a peddler. Basically, he was a small time entrepreneur. He would sell stuff, and he would drive to Valleyfield. You know what Valleyfield is?
Yeah, yeah.
Drive to Valley. It's all French.
Yeah.
Drive to Valleyfield.
With Chateauguay.
And okay, so he drive to Valleyfield, and he would sell it at the trunk of his car. That was his life. My grandfather is about as, in my view, is about as he's about as Quebec as it gets.
Hustler.
He was a hustler. He was born, raised here. He speaks French perfectly. He is someone that loves this place so very much, and I want to be like him one day. I want to also speak French. I want to. When I die one day, and hopefully I live my life here, I want to be a Quebecer. And I don't necessarily believe I'm entitled to it. I'm going to earn the right to do that. But don't make it so hard for other people to see what I see about this place. And I don't just mean Montreal. I mean Quebec. I mean the culture here. I want people to see what I see.
Well,
Honestly, on that note, I think that's a great way to end the podcast. So yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for
and,
having me.
Yeah,
This
it's
has
great
been
conver-
unhinged.
Yeah,
But it's great.
That's
But
what
I
it
guess
is.
that's the point of the podcast.
That's it.
It's
It's
unhinged.
like,
Yeah. Even by the way, the franglais thing is so interesting, right? Like I
to
assume
be able to go back and
it's
forth,
so cool.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah. Thanks again, and I appreciate it.
much
Appreciate you guys.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Esti de franglais!